everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Viking Chats. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Liana and Ollie of Loporto Browne?
Loporto
Browne.
Or LB Residential.
There we go. Yeah. So guys, thanks for coming and joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Welcome to the cocktail lounge.
Without no
place.
cocktails.
It's the one whenever I do online, people always think things like the cocktail trolley are a backdrop, and I have to.
That's for real, right?
To prove that it's definitely for real. I don't know what that is.
We can prove
We'll try
it
later.
afterwards.
We're doing dry Jan.
It's
And
Portuguese.
vegan, so we're struggling. It's proper hardcore at the moment.
It's alright. If it goes really badly, we've got some fire water there. That will both take hair off and put hair on all in one go. Guys, thanks for coming down and joining me today. So, let's jump straight into it. So, there's not a huge amount of couples in our industry who work together. It's not. There are some, but it's not something we see a lot of. Anne and I always joke about the fact that lots of people think that Anne and I are a couple.
I have to admit that when I first met you, I thought that.
Well, exactly. I loved it when Anne announced that she was getting married. The amount of people who came up at events and congratulated us. Like, so happy. And Anne was like, yeah, I think my wife might be a little bit pissed off about that one. To some confused looks. So, do you guys work together before you started the business?
We met.
Yeah, we met at a corporate, big corporate.
Yeah, nearly
19 years ago.
19 years ago.
Who was that? Which company?
Foxtons.
Yeah, so Liana was in St John's Wood, I was in Notting Hill.
I had just moved from
The
Malta.
Foxtons homeland.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we were rivals at the time.
We
were
went
competing
separate
against each
opposites.
other.
As they do in Foxtons, right? It is love and war with the emphasis on
Dog
war.
eat dog. But it was such a good training, and I have nothing bad to say about my time at Foxtons. I loved it. We both loved it. I mean, Ollie stayed for 17 years at
My first manager was ex-Foxtons.
I mean, the experience that you get working in that environment, and not only, I mean, I had come from a different world, moving from Malta property market to the UK property market. It taught me everything I needed.
Isn't it fascinating? So, some people will know my dad lives in Spain, and last year I helped him sell his house out there, and a few years ago I did the same thing with my mum when we brought it back to the UK. And for all the tough what's the word, all the criticism that agency in this country gets, right or wrong, holy cow, even our not so good agents over here are amazing compared to some of the agents I dealt with in Spain, and yet over there 5% plus VAT standard.
Yeah, well, I think Australia look at UK and think that we are behind, and the American style of agency, but it's so different when you have worked in a typical style where there's a deposit, it's 5%. It's just
and so contractional. I mean, that is one thing I did love about Spain. Like we got an offer on my dad's house, and it was like, cool, this is the offer, we'll exchange contracts in 7 days with a 10% non-refundable deposit. And
I mean, we could talk forever about the archaic conveyancing system in this country, but when we met, we were at Foxtons, and they used to take the top 10% of the company on these trips, on these
4 times a year.
crazy trips.
skiing in Courchevel.
Chamonix.
But we met in Iceland, the country. In Reykjavik.
Trip,
I've heard about this place. It sounds like quite a cool place to be.
You might have heard of it, right?
I've heard something about this place.
And there was a snowstorm, and everything that was meant to happen got cancelled.
happen.
So we all just hang out at a bar and just got drunk, basically.
And I remember...
I mean, the Icelanders do like their alcohol.
Yeah.
It's very fucking expensive, but they like their alcohol.
So expensive, we couldn't believe. But I remember drinking at breakfast when people were coming down to breakfast and us still up chatting, and Ollie doesn't remember it at all.
Sounds, the sign of a really good night is the ones you don't really remember.
I met Ida Johnson's mum there as well. Do you know who Ida Johnson is?
No.
Famous Chelsea football player from 20 years ago. Anyway, I met her in Iceland, and that was my highlight. But then,
Gee, thanks.
But then we were in
That's the first time I've heard that, by the way. On the podcast.
truth comes out.
On the bloody podcast.
You know, darling, it was nice meeting you, but I got to meet a footballer.
I'm out of here.
Footballer's mum, remember?
Footballer's mum.
And she's Icelandic.
Dude, you're digging
Very
yourself a
attractive.
hole there.
It was so much fun. So those were the Foxtons days,
Yeah.
which were instrumental. We used to work hard, we used to play hard, and it was an environment that I think, you know, if you were part of that, you can only understand being part of that training ground where...
And if you did well there,
They drove such a shift in what agency in the UK looked like. You know, right or wrong, whether you bought into, and very few agents have bought into the entirety of what that Foxtons machine was like back then. And it seems in many ways under Guy, they've kind of returned to a lot of those like core objectives of being, you know, unapologetically
aggressive,
outrageously competitive. Let's go with competitive. And like I said, my very first manager when I started an agency, tiny little letting agency in Islington called MySpace, which funny enough still goes now and is owned by the guy who came in after me. I was number one employee, he was number two. But yeah, one of the own directors was a lady called Emma Basden, who'd been at Foxtons like 5 years and been a branch manager or something. And yeah, you know, she drilled in, she kind of brought that really on it attitude to lead.
Structure, hard work, just
and like you said,
working, putting in as much. And for
work
me,
hard, play hard. We had some great
and
nights
also
out
the work hard.
Yeah.
It's based on meritocracy, and it's something that I couldn't have achieved in another agency if I had worked in another agency.
Yeah.
Because I did the Sunday shifts. I did the 3 to 5 on the Sunday. You'd be sitting in the office, and I was the average age of the negotiators was younger, so I had come in and I was like 27, 28, and I remember sitting
Ancient.
I mean, you know, but the graveyard shift when you're that age, and I thought, what happened? But the hard work paid off.
I
And
needed
my
it.
point is
I needed
the
that
structure that
yeah.
it gives you.
But at the time, they were like
incredible.
anything. I mean, the amount of instructions they were constantly
Oh,
taking on at that
2027,
time. I mean, it was-
2007,
We
the
had-
ringer used to go, and
Yeah.
everybody, we'd be like sharks jumping on that phone, and it was...
We had 650 instructions just in Notting Hill, just for sales.
I mean, mental,
Yeah.
right? Mental. You think about that now,
Yeah.
I don't think they'll have anything like that.
But I don't think the agents in today's world, not to fair, will say something that's not PC, but the John Hunt times, the agency nowadays, you just wouldn't survive.
Look, right or wrong, they didn't get everything right. You know, I
Yeah.
always, his mantra of we go to war for our clients. Now, I've got to say, my attitude at the time was like, I totally get the competitiveness and that hunger for the deal, but I was like, we're estate agents, guys. Like, we don't need to go to war for anyone. Like, just do a good fucking job. So, like, there were elements to them, but I've talked about this on podcasts before with people, and it was my relationship with Foxtons as an agent that competed, because again, Islington, I mean, they were monsters in Islington.
Yeah,
That's where I cut my teeth. In agency, my first year in agency.
Not with Foxtons, though.
No, with this
MySpace.
little independent.
Yeah, okay.
But it was, I remember, like, you know, got my feet in the ground first couple of months, found that I loved it, found that I took to it, and kind of in that time, in like the next month or so, you know, you had that natural resentment, like lots of agents did back then, of like,
But the Islington office in particular, they'd give out the
They
cars
were ruthless.
as well.
Yeah.
And we'd go to that office, all of the St. John's Wood, well, you went.
Oh,
because
and
you
I
were
remember all the
central.
tactics
And
that
we'd
they
be
would
driving off with a Ferrari on a Friday. I mean, the other agents on the street
Oh, God, yeah.
would look at us. Or
I
we'd
remember
get on
sometimes we used to have to go to the
supercars.
Islington office to pick up keys, be like, we can't find them. Oh, they're signed out with a
But do you know,
contractor.
I refuse
I mean, I was
to-
ruthless. I just get the landlord on the phone and be like, so Foxtons have lost your keys. I think we've just found them. It's okay. I think they've just found them. No
But
problem.
I refuse to use enemy agent now, because that's what we used to call
EA,
other agents,
yeah.
EA. And I'm sure in the notes somewhere in the Foxtons you have the enemy agents, and everybody was the enemy
EA's
of Foxtons.
coming in.
But there was, I think, I can't remember if it was the person I worked for, if it was someone I was talking to at the time, but about 3 months in, and I had this like, Foxtons, like so many agents did. And then I remember talking to an agent one day, I genuinely can't remember if it was my boss or not, and they just went, why do you hate Foxtons? And I was like, and he's like, so, all right, so great, you don't have to do everything they do. He's like, do you know what I think when I hear that a Foxtons agent has done a view, the person I've taken out has just been out on a view with a Foxtons agent, or the person who's been into value before me was a Foxtons agent. He's like, there is nothing I love better than doing a valuation after a Foxtons agent. And I'm like, and bearing in mind, this is also in the days where, right or wrong, Foxtons had a reputation for overvaluing as well. And I was like, what? I'm like, no, dude, you don't want the hungriest agent. And he was like, no, mate. He was like, because you get an opportunity to prove your genuine expertise, because you can go in and go, oh, interesting, they've told you it's worth X, Y, Z. Can I show you 5 deals I've done in the last month that categorically shows why that is absolute BS? And he was like, also, they've come in and pitched 17% plus all the extras. We're charging, I'm pretty sure they had a similar model to us now, like 15%. So it's like,
I think it's taken me a while to see that. Like now, I proudly say I worked at Foxtons. There was a long time where I used to, and even when I was at Foxtons, I'd be embarrassed to work. But now, what it gave me and how we can do that as well and appreciate what they have done in the industry, that was a kind of a really forward-thinking way of presenting it to you.
We've taken the best bits out of what we learned at Foxtons.
Yeah, exactly
and adapted it to ourselves.
And we know what competition is.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about, right? I think I didn't realise how well that kind of competitive nature had been drilled into me until I moved to my second agency where I met Anne. Because I came in there as a neg, and it made me think of this when you were talking about the phones, right? Like, you were drilled to
jump on the
3 rings, no call gets to 3 rings. Like, if it hits second, you're slow, right? And I remember, I was horrendous in our office. Like, I think I was one of 3 lettings negs, and there were 2 sales negs, and I was brought in to work across both the company.
Sales and lettings.
Sales and lettings.
That was unheard of, and now
so every lead was a lead for me, right?
You'd be a sales neg or lettings neg, right?
I would work. Did I have a headset? No, that's right. I had a headset. I had a headset on, and I would be working, and I would have my phone as close as possible to the keyboard. And you just tap a button. But what pissed the other guys off is I would be in mid-conversation, and if another call come in, I'd just pick up the call, and I'd be like, sorry, are you okay to hold? We're just really busy at the moment. And I'd put that call on hold. I'd go back to the first call and go, sorry, I don't know what happened there. I lost you for a second. Can you hear me okay? Cool, carry on. Meanwhile, I would have evils from across the office being like, transfer the call to me. I'm like, that's my call. I'd be like, I would hoover up 80% of the phone calls. And I remember one morning, like, they genuinely had a bit of a moan to the manager, and they were like, Kristjan's taking all the phone calls. And he was like, answer the phone quicker.
He's hungry.
It's like...
It's a commission-based job, right?
It's a commission-based job. Yeah. Like, the phone rings at the same time. Be hungry. And the other thing, and this is where Anne and I formed our relationship. Anne was the lister. That was her job. She didn't have to generate leads. The company did quite a bit of marketing. They had 2 people sat at the other head office for the business, and their job was literally just to hit the phones all day, the old school stuff, loot, wherever they could find it, they would hit.
Good old loot.
They would call those adverts day in, day out, and fill Anne's diary with appointments. And so Anne would go out on 4 to 6 vals every day, here, there, and everywhere. It was quite a unique business in that time, in that a lot of our stock was East London because we were on Isle of Dogs, but really, you went anywhere. And again, looking at how the business worked, we used to have these morning briefings every morning where Anne would say, went to see this yesterday, I've landed this, I've got to follow up that, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, why the fuck are we waiting for the morning meeting? So, you know, I very quickly learned, because I sat next to Anne, I'd be like, where are you off to this morning? She'd be like, oh, you know, I'm going to see a 2-bed here and a, you know, and a 1-bed there, and well, what do you think they're, you know, what do you think they're going to come on for? Oh, you know, this and that. Be like, okay, cool. And I know Anne, like, she would run that 1 hour appraisal, like she always did, exactly an hour. And I knew, like, the first 40 minutes was building that rapport, which she's amazing at, and kind of conveying a bit of expertise. And then, like, the back end, the 20 minutes was when she'd start to get into kind of starting to close. So I would always call bang on 50 minutes. And I would have already called out my entire database that morning. I would have found out what she's going to, I would have called my entire database, and I would call her at 50 minutes of the hour, and I would go, how's it going? Because at first she wouldn't answer my calls, and then she knew, then she started to learn it was really good to answer that call. I'd be like, how's it going? And she's like, good. And I'd go, cool. I've got 4 people who want to come and see the flat tonight. Can you ask the landlord if you can have a key, or if I can meet him this evening, or can you leave a key with the concierge? I do viewings tonight. And what a fantastic closer that was for her, because she'd be sat there being like, we've got 4 qualified applicants that can be in tonight. You know, and we'd be doing deals, and we'd get to the morning meeting, and Anne would be there like, oh, I went to this yesterday and that yesterday, and someone would be like, oh, I've got a couple of people for that. She'd be like, so that's already let. And the eyes would turn.
I think it's just the good agency,
But if
right?
it wasn't
it's
for
what we're used to.
Your it wasn't for your ex-Foxtons manager in my
No, but
this is like that.
There was that what she'd ingrained in me.
Yeah.
You know, that mindset, because I you know, with her, like a lot of my job there, I was the only neck.
Yeah.
But they still fostered this, you know, a listing comes in, you know, that was back in the days, as we often reminisce about, of your applicant box. So, you know, you'd get a listing in, and literally you'd take out your 2-bed applicant cards, and you'd take out all the ones that were relevant, and you'd slap them on your desk, and you'd work your way through, and you'd make a note of who you spoke to.
I just couldn't believe, because coming from an industry where, like, which was self-employed, right? You rent your desk in an office, you work under a brand, so that was how the market was.
Kind of
I couldn't
American,
believe how easy it was. So when I came here, I was like, what? You're going to give me a car, you're going to give me an office, you're going to give me leads, and you're going to give me property.
And a basic salary.
And the salary.
Yeah.
And it was 10 grand.
Yeah.
But it was a salary.
But you got a car and a phone.
I had that's all you need, a car and a phone, right? So for me, everybody was complaining, and I was just like, this is good.
Well, I mean, you know, Anne says one of the reasons she got into agency was she was like, I want a car. You know, she split with her husband, who had always afforded her a nice car. She's like, I want a car. And so that was the primary driver. What offers a car? Agency.
Yeah, that's why I joined Foxtons, because I used to get the cool
I had manifested the Foxtons Mini, and it was a fantastic platform, because it gives you everything you need if you want to succeed.
Talking about the 10k, because I want to move on to that, I think this basic salary has not destroyed the industry, but it's created a lot of drifters, and that's unfortunately what they did at Foxtons
But that's why it's turning into more of a self-employed, because of the salaries.
Yeah, so at Foxtons, because we were on 10 and 10, so you'd have to rent something, you'd have to sell something. 10k was my beer money, I used to talk about it. Everything else was my survival money. And as soon as the government said, right, you have to do minimum wage, you just get drifters. And that was, I think, was a huge problem.
It's a double-edged sword, because then you also don't have salaries that sustain people for longer times. So there's 2 sides of that.
It's tricky, because I do think at the end of the day, it's a company's obligation when they're taking a risk or a chance on a new employee. That employee should be secure in taking home a minimum wage. And I don't think, and ultimately it's down to a company to decide what those metrics are and not to let people drift, as you say. I think what's going to be challenging is the new employment rights with rights from day one.
Yeah.
Not that first 6 to 12 month interim. That, I think, is going to create a much more challenging dynamic within our industry than any kind of minimum wage.
I think it's already challenging enough for a small agency. Or Ollie doesn't like the word small agency.
Independent. I like to stick with the word independent. It just leaves it open.
It is an independent agency, but it's when you start looking at PAYE and all of that's why our industry is changing so much, because there's so little money or so little profit in some of the independents, right? So having staff and then having all of the things that come with having a bunch of staff,
Well, I think a lot of the industry's reaction to that, particularly in the sales roles, will be to expect people to be self-employed. Because it's the only way that you can protect the company. You can kind of pitch it to the person of, look, a bit in a similar way of 10 and 10 was like, dude, it's up to you how much you earn.
Just giving you
in
something
a similar way,
keep.
you can be like, look, it's up to you. You run that risk of, how enfranchised are they within the business, but theoretically they take home more as a self-employed person for generating the same income. As we know, self-employed will typically pay less tax on that than an employed person. So I think that's what you'll see quite commonly within the industry, is I think you'll see that pivot. Now,
I just think that self-employed people will probably need more support. So this industry will change, because a lot of them, including myself, are very good negotiators. But we've had hard lessons with our own business, where you suddenly from an agent, you're a business owner, and they're very, very different roles.
And we know as well, lettings and sales, again, very different with where we're going in lettings. I was chatting with someone about this, someone the other day. We were talking about this whole self-employed, employed, even within a business, because you've got some agents now starting to migrate to the kind of the powered by EXP model, but still operate their agency, because it kind of gives them that flexibility to kind of operate two different models at once. But it was a really interesting conversation, because they were like, but with self-employed, it's that challenge of, in lettings, you're going to need to invest substantially in their training to make sure they've got the technical knowledge. Yes, you always have the old adage of employed, what if I train them and they leave? What if you don't and they stay? But equally, if they're self-employed, if you're investing thousands into turning them into a highly knowledgeable lettings expert, where does that put you 1, 2, 3 years down the line?
Into recruitment as well, doesn't it? It's having those initial conversations with someone where you think, actually, do I want to take a risk on this person?
But the salary one is another interesting one with the salary one. I remember, this was again when I was working on the Isle of Dogs with Anne, so this would have been 22, 23 years ago, when I discovered that, Savills model at the time, which was, they typically paid much higher salaries. It was like 25 grand.
Pooled commission.
And then you had either pooled commission, or it would be based on dividends. It would be based on company
profit.
performance and profitability. Which again, I think that's quite interesting, and I think that for me is a more interesting model in the sales thing. Is not to buy. It's not to tie it to the deal, but to tie it to the business. So, and again, particularly in lettings, where it's a much longer relationship with the client. You ideally want tenancies to be as long as possible as well, so you don't really want to be shoving someone in who's going to bounce in 6 months because you've kind of half fooled them into running a property that isn't quite right for them.
And you've got 270 bits of legislation to know about?
It's probably
we did think, lettings, let's do it, and we had a dodgy acquisition, and we've learned so much from how hard it is to run a lettings business. We did University 101, so we did it but it is really challenging, and if you don't necessarily know what you are doing, you can't blag it. You've got to do it right.
It's really hard. It is so technical, and Anne and I have talked about this a lot. I don't think either of us could have built Base without the other, because Anne is really good at the details. Like, my God, is that woman good at the minutiae and the details and staying on top of compliance and you know, all the day-to-day stuff that you've got to be good at to be an effective letting agent.
So you're just a face.
But you can't. Obviously. If your agency's going to survive and thrive, you've got to have that, because eventually that all falls apart. But then you can't just be sat at your desk like that,
exactly
doing
that.
that,
And I
because
think
then you don't evolve. And
we were particularly unlucky because it wasn't just what the business, it was the clients that, like, if you're going to progress and you're going to grow, you know, growth comes with pain and problems.
Growth is tough.
Growth is so tough, and we thought we could grow quickly, and that's our mistake. We wanted to run before we walked, and I don't think anybody that has started a business or done the first few years in a business quite understands how difficult that is. So yeah, I think it's appreciating that, learning from it, and like really putting things in place so that you, like you said with Anne and you, we bring very different things to the table, and that's also been a lesson for us. Like, who's doing what, whose role, where do we lead, where do we step back?
It can be hard to admit what you're good and not good at.
Especially
it ain't hard to know what you're good at, but it can be quite hard to be like, no, you're absolutely right.
That's the beauty about husband and wife, is that you can trust each other and say, I know what she's good at, she knows what I'm good at, and we can have honest conversations with each other.
I think it's, instead of having a colleague that you're sometimes more cautious about telling them what you think. Obviously, Anne and you have that relationship, but with Ollie, I'm like, dude, what's going on there?
Yeah.
We've got to like...
Well, don't start. I know that face. I know that eyebrow raise. I know what that means. You know you fucked up.
and you know what? To be honest, it's the same. There are some things that he will take the lead on, and I step back and I'm like, right.
I say, Liana, how do you think you could have done that?
He doesn't.
And then after slapping you in the face, she gives you an answer.
He doesn't.
I think
he doesn't
you know what?
phrase it like that.
But the growth thing,
go.
I think the growth thing is really interesting, because I've known, and I think this is something particularly when you come out of working in corporate agency.
Yeah.
And particularly if that's all you've known, because you work in an environment where there is this constant source of leads.
Yeah.
There are constant new landlord or vendor inquiries, there are constant applicant inquiries, because you have this big portfolio. And I've seen a lot of people, some still in it, some who very quickly learnt those challenges weren't for them. But I've known quite a lot of people over the years who've done the corporate thing, 5-10 years, have been like, I fucking smashed this.
Yeah, exactly
I don't want 20-30% anymore, I want 100%, I'm going to go and do this. And within 2 years, I'm going to have And then you go out and you're like, what?
So what they don't think about... What they don't think about is...
one vendor lead this week, what the fuck? You know, it's...
What they don't think about is sitting in a room alone with a computer with no data on it and a phone that doesn't ring and nobody to call or generate the business, and nobody thinks about that part.
You don't have a marketing team and a £10 million budget being spent out of eyes and ears.
But I think if
that's
you manage to kick it off, you're like, that's something really special, and you might not get it right straight away. And if when you start building, it's like Chris W was great, because he was like, queen of your manor. And that's what I did. I just listened, and I was talking, and it, like that, nobody will teach me that. I had to do that alone to build the business to a stage where we joined together. But that was graft, and that was like hard work. And now I look back, I'm like, wow, 2 years ago.
So do you know the history of that, Liana?
Tell more.
Set up by herself with EXP initially.
Yes.
You were one of the first, and then subsequently joined, and then we formed Loporto Browne from there.
So when I got my diagnosis...
And Loporto Browne is not EXP, or it is...
No. So when I got my diagnosis, my business fell off a cliff because it was just me. And I think I had built it up to a point where it was doing well. Ollie was still with Foxtons, and at that point we started having conversations, and I think it was just time. It was madness not to do it. And most people tell us, how do you even consider going into business with your partner? because I would strangle mine. But actually,
I always say, why wouldn't I?
Yeah, I think it's horses for courses, isn't it? Different relationships. I mean, I've been with my wife Hayley. We're in our 26th year together now.
Would you work with her?
2000. Sure, we did work together, not an agency. We worked together early doors because we were both actors. We met at drama college. We were both actors, and so we both did shitty bit jobs whilst we were trying to get our acting career off the ground. And Hayley and I worked at All Bar One together for like a year. I still rib her about us working together because she was sometimes a designated team leader, sometimes a self-appointed team leader, which like whenever she gets a bit bossy at home, I'm like, oh, team leader's turned up today. She'd be the one balking at us at the restaurant that the ketchup bottles hadn't been cleaned, or but yeah, no, we got on, and it's something we've actually, we've got aspirations to do stuff together down the line. Like what I'm doing now with Base and Depository, of zero interest to her on a job basis. Like we've had those conversations over the years a few times, being like, you want to come and work with me? No. But there are things we've talked about that, when our next stage of life comes along, whenever that is, we've got ideas of what we want to do, and it is absolutely doing stuff together. So
that's great. I think our relationship has evolved very much from the time where we made the decision to start a business together to now, and we've literally trudged through trauma for the first couple of years, and now finally at the start of this year I think we both feel like we're in a really good place to start building the business. But yeah, I think it's taken a little while to feel like this, but also just understanding that it's really normal.
And look, I think tough times, whatever that means, personal, professional, whatever. It's that kind of forged in fire thing, right? You get through that stuff, you come out the other side, you do typically feel stronger, more resilient, more prepared. And your attitude to issues shifts as well. You start to realise there's very few things that are ever outside of personal stuff. In fact, personal stuff is actually more all-encompassing, but it kind of puts business into context, that there are very few things in business, unless you intentionally set out to do something shitty, there's very few things in business that are as scary or damaging to your business as you think. I mean,
we were let down by people, so it was pretty. It really affected the morale, because you're trusting to what people tell you, and you're taking people on face value, and they're not difficult. Honest people, and that was very difficult.
Even as people you think you know.
We had each other though.
We had each other, and although we went directly, like it affected us in very different ways. We always had each other, and I think that really makes you appreciate the other person, and the fact that we know we've always got each other's back, I think is so important.
It's actually pretty powerful when we go on valuations together. We did something in St John's Wood yesterday, and the mother and daughter just looked at us and just went, "Wow, when can we give you the keys?"
Done. Yeah, I mean, look, it's Anne and I, obviously, because we've now been together so long. I mean, we joke. We joked earlier that people think she's my wife, but we do. She's my work wife. I spend more waking hours with this woman than I do with the woman I'm married to.
You know the quirks.
And we have that level of trust. We've been through enough now. We've done enough. And we carved that. Starting with the business, with Anne going through what she was going through with the court case over in Belgium, and we've backed each other time and time again throughout the business. But I think the interesting thing, I've not had too much go on personally. I don't really feel that's impacted how I feel about work. But one thing I do know is pretty much every major event from a business transaction point of view that's happened, that our initial reaction has been, oh fuck, what do we do now? Like literally from when we started the company, right? Before we even started the company, 2 days, the day before we were due to sign the lease for our shop up in North London, we're in there with the builder, planning out what needs to be done. And these two lads stroll in with their builder, and we're like, who are you? And they're like, what are you doing in our uncle's shop? It's like, this is our shop tomorrow. And they're like, no, it's not, because we've signed a lease today with our uncle. Off you pop. And that was, you know, at the point, Anne and I had pledged 10 grand each to start this business. That was it. 10 grand each in the pot, sink or swim. That's what we've got to get it off the ground and make it work. And out of that 20 grand pot, that was 5 grand that we'd spent on legal fees, surveying, because that was a 25-year lease. Like, the shop had damp, all this sort of, we'd spent 5 grand on legal surveys, all this sort of stuff, and then...
But these are all the foundations, and I think one of the things that makes us, as a independent, look at you as and really admire your ways and your journeys and what you've achieved, is that you've done that, and you've done that with a lot of joy. And you've done that by being very different to your average agent. Yeah. And you've done that by treating people right. And I think that's exactly, if you do that, you can't fail.
I think it's really interesting. There's a phrase in our industry which is used a lot, and I think it's often used, not falsely, but it's this thing of people buy from people. Oh, we're a people industry. And it's like, it's absolutely true, yes. But I think I always give that caveat of people buy from people that they like, people buy from people that they identify with, and people buy from people that where they think the product or service is going to be good. Those are the three driving caveats. So this safety badge that some agents wear of, oh yeah, you know, tech's not going to do this and that's not going to do that because people buy from people. Yeah, if your people pick up the phone and return a call and are proactive and know their shit. But also people who have a bit of personality and are genuine.
Yeah, it's the genuine part, I think. Because there's a lot of people that can say it. But there's a few that actually do it.
And you know, I learned that with Anne, like still to this day.
The most genuine person
The most genuine person ever.
Absolutely.
And that is what she's like with every landlord she talks to. I mean, like, it's a long running joke. Like, she will come back from evaluation with someone she has never met before. She's been in a room with them for an hour. And not only does she come back with the instruction at our feet, and sometimes she'll come back and she's given the lowest rental price appraisal and we've quoted the highest fee. She'll come back with that. But not only does she come back with that, she comes back with this person's life story and like with 2 secrets that her family don't even know.
But do you know what?
It's like,
do you know what?
Do you drug them? Like, how does this work?
I don't know whether this was a Foxtons thing, but if you remember in our notes, sometimes the manager would reward you, or you'd get like a 50 quid on a Friday, because that's what used to be some of the thing, for finding out a random fact, like the cat's name.
It's true.
Get them to open up.
Or you remember how many children were football teams.
Yeah.
So that was the information gathering was so important, because obviously you are going to be part of this person's life and you're going to be really close. And that's what we tell people. Now we're in a fortunate position. We're like, if you get us, you get us, because we're going to be very close for a while and we have to navigate a few situations before we get to exchange of contract. And they're going to be tough conversations. And you either want me to skirt around them and not tell you, or you want me to be completely honest with them. And if they don't want that, then that's absolutely
I said
fine.
something the other day to a client, and I just said, look, our mantra is that we just give good, honest advice and the business just follows us. And I said that, I was like, actually, that's so true. It just came out. It's like,
that's really true. So you stop in front of the client and go, hold on a minute. That's fucking genius. Sorry, back in the room.
But it is, it's true. It follows us because we're always just
We're 90% referral now,
Yeah, it
which
is.
we hardly have time to canvas, which is a really incredible position to have. It's a good problem to have.
Amazing problem to have.
Well, we started thinking maybe we should start charging consultancy fees because we're getting
so many people
calling
ask us for
all the
advice,
time
and we're giving so much free advice, which we give with love.
Yeah.
But we're so so we're really looking at that now because
that's
we're
our
got so much
personalities just coming
experience.
through.
And even if they're selling with another agent, they call me up. They're like, I know, or I see them. I'm showing them a house. They come to me. I know I have another agent, but I'd really like your opinion on it.
So this is something fascinating in lettings as well. I had a really interesting thing yesterday. I had, as we often do, a friend of a friend kind of reached out and was like, "Oh my God, a friend's having a nightmare with their let. Can you help? All right, can you tell me a bit more information?" Yeah, this person's got a journey ahead of them. They've got problems. But the fascinating thing was, like you guys, I fired back. I was like, right, first things first, they need to do this, and this. And they need to think about this and think about that. And I was like, by the way, agent involved? There had been an agent involved, but very basic service. So they've kind of gone, we've done what you paid us for, right or wrong. But what I found interesting was like, oh yeah, but she's reached out to a few other agents since to ask for help. And no help given. Just, oh no, not our tenant, not a problem.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's...
Most of our landlords...
It's finding that balance, right? About how
22
involved you get with those situations.
In lettings, I think in lettings especially. I think in sales, I kind of get it. You've got to...
Well, I'm half and half now.
You got to find that balance. You got to find that
50-50.
balance where you're willing to give that advice, but also ones where you're like, I'm sorry, but you didn't retain our services. Mm-hmm. But if it doesn't work out, you know where to come back to. And then, you have to find that line. What was I going to say? I've lost my point. What were we?
It was the agent. Sorry,
they were
trying to get a whole load of advice from the other agents, and they won't give me advice.
Oh yeah, and it's so in lettings, it's such a different value proposition, right? So as we know, sales largely transactional. Your typical person, roughly 10 years, whatever it is that they'll do a sale on. Most of our landlords, we've been running base now nearly 22 years. A big chunk of our clients have been with us, the lion's share of that. So a good chunk of our clients have been with us 15 years, paying our fees every year for those 15 years. As a business approach, to have someone come to your agency for help in a crappy situation, and yes, it's not a situation if you're making, absolutely not. But to be like, oh no, you didn't pay for our help, you don't get our help now.
It should be a compliment.
I think that's what makes the difference.
Do you think that
right?
landlord's ever going to pick up the phone to you again?
Yeah.
No. Why should they? Whereas, my thing was like, look, give her my number. I'll have a chat. Like, I'm really busy at the moment, so I might need to be a chat in the evening when I'm at home, and I will talk through some stuff. I'm like, and I can give her some friendly tips, and I can also tell her commercially what we can do to help and what the costs involved with that would be, and it's her choice. And I can point her to some articles that we've done that will guide her through how to handle this stuff. Why don't you want to put in that effort?
I think that's what makes the difference between the corporates and now the independents and the self-employed agents, right? Because at the end of the day, the corporate business doesn't belong to you. So why would you put yourself out of hours to be there for somebody that's not necessarily going to pay you any money? Whereas when you're an independent and you really genuinely, that's where I say you genuinely do care. I mean, Ollie's always on the phone with somebody helping them do something. Like, I thought I was good at that. I thought, when people say go the extra mile, and that's the one thing. There are people that call him for advice all the time, and it's constant.
It's that black book though that what you're creating, and regardless of whether I was at Foxtons or not, I kind of had that black book always in the back of my mind.
Because if you become the go-to person, this is what a lot of agents don't get. It's not about just what you do. You want to be able to help someone.
It's 10 years later.
With any aspect of that property. Yeah. They need a lawyer, they need a gardener, they want an architect, they need a drain cleaner. Like, you want your name to be the first name that person thinks of when the word property happens in a conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm having a nightmare with this with my property, or how am I going to do this with my property? You want your name to be the first thing. Do you know what? Do you know who will have the answer to this?
I think for both of us, it's 10 years later, the daughter, the cousin, the aunt, the uncle. Let's call Ollie, let's call Liana for their advice.
And look, and we have that with tenants now, right? And we're coming into this new Renters' Rights Act era, this era where landlords and agents, like it or not, are going to have to get the fuck on board. We're looking after tenants much, much better than a lot of them currently think is acceptable. But that was always one of our driving reasons for starting Base, was we felt tenants, and particularly London tenants with the amount of rent you pay in this city, were being so massively shortchanged, and a huge part of us has been that parity of service, striving for excellence of service, but for both, not pitting them against one another, not, and again, like you said, we see that now. We see tenants that rented with us a decade ago, and since then they've bought a home, and then they've moved in with a partner, or they've taken a job abroad, and who is the only agent they pick up a phone to? Us.
Yeah.
Why? Because they were treated well, and it is so often we'll be like, oh, why are you coming back to us? And they're like, dude, if that's how you treat your tenants, we don't need to worry about how you treat your landlords.
It's basic, isn't it? Treat people right.
And again, this psychology, and on that basis, from a business point of view, I've always found some agents' attitude to tenants, this attitude that they are an inconvenience. They are just something or someone who just sign the contract, and just please, otherwise just get out of the way, because you're not my client, you don't pay my fees. Yeah, but you need them for your client to pay a fee. But I've never understood that attitude of why you would want, and again, particularly the bigger the brand, the truer this story is, right? Why, with most people starting their property journey as tenants, and increasingly so, why on earth would you want to embed a toxic impression of your brand at the start of a 50, 60 year involvement in property? Someone's lifelong involvement in property. Do you really want the first 2-3 years experience of that person in property to align your brand with everything wrong about property? Crap service, crap communication, unprofessionalism, because you've just cost yourself potentially 60 years worth of revenue.
Yeah.
And if you've got a mortgage arm and a sales arm and an investment arm, because again, as I've just talked about, tenants aren't just homeowners, right? They are your future landlords.
I remember at Foxtons when I was a neg and I used to do viewings, you get those tricky tenants who just wouldn't let you in, or maybe only once a week or an hour or something. My boss said to me, remember, that tenant will turn into a buyer one day. They'll sell something one day. I was like, yeah, you're right. And that's always, I guess it's through parenting as well. Mum and dad have always given me good foundation, and I think
treat people as you like to be treated, right?
Treated, exactly. That's what it's all about.
So when my first day at Foxtons, it was, do you remember that program that came out? She was in my office.
Oh, it was a doozy.
Across.
I mean, not that much really came out of it, and from what I recall, Fox's us were pretty much like, that's right, we do deals no matter what it takes.
They really
did.
If any landlord wanted to do things right and compliant, they then went to Foxtons, because they changed. They really tightened up and changed everything. But that was my introduction to the UK property market.
You had a brick through your window.
Yeah. I mean, people know that story, but it was just.
I remember the minis getting tacked a lot off the back of that. Yeah. I remember a lot of minis getting tacked off the back, and boards being ripped down, because did Foxtons love a board back in those days. I mean, they still love them now, but I remember seeing the vans going around with the 30 Foxtons boards on the back of it. It's like, someone's got a busy day.
He's still around, that guy.
But then you'd also catch them pulling down the other agents' boards and be like, I see you. It's not my board, so I'm not going to tell anyone, but I see you.
Board wars, that's funny.
So, look, we've talked a lot about agency and stuff. we do need to start heading towards some sort of conclusion on this. I think we could sit in here for ages, get the drinks out. But I wanted, we would be remiss not to talk about Women in Estate Agency. So, obviously, Liana, you and Claire are the original architects.
OGs.
The OGs. So you guys started the Facebook group, right?
Yeah,
Which is what kicked it all off.
We did. Claire recently reminded me that at EXP I used to do Ladies Who Lunch. And I had completely forgotten about it. And then Claire and I kicked off the Facebook group, and it, as you know, what it's become today, it's absolutely mushroomed and taken and grown legs and become this incredible place that inspires and empowers women in our industry. And I couldn't have, I mean, both Claire and I could never have imagined what it would have turned into, obviously because of the incredible women on that board.
What's that like, seeing something that, you know, you set it up not for any aspiration other than to just have a safe space for women to be able to talk to one another and support one another. Like to start with something like that where it was like, fuck man, we just need somewhere where we can talk.
Yeah.
And then to see it escalate very quickly. You know, very quickly, what was it, like 3 years?
Yeah.
From kind of starting the group to the first
Even less.
conference?
It was probably a year and a half in our first conference, because it was I go pre-diagnosis and post-diagnosis. It was just before our first conference. So it's to expand to that and to be able to have our first conference was 240 odd, and now we're at just under 500. I don't know, do you know that I've stepped back from the board because I've had to have this year to fully focus razor sharp on the business.
You got a family and a business, and it's a lot.
I'm the regional executive for Property Mark, so that year of presidency I've always been so busy, and I've had to consciously slow myself down.
The power of no.
To focus on the business. But looking at the leadership courses, women that come up to me and say thank you for doing that, what we now can provide to women to help them, whereas we didn't have that.
No.
Or, the core reason for starting the group for Claire and myself was that when we went to see to seek role models that had been through a challenge that we were looking to overcome, they just weren't there. They weren't talking. They were there. They just weren't talking about it.
Yeah.
They weren't having the conversations, the hard conversations.
Because there wasn't a safe space to have that conversation.
Because there wasn't a safe space. There wasn't any space to go and say, guys, I'm struggling with this. I've just had kids. I'm coming back. Or I don't feel good enough. Or I'm having these challenges at work.
And kismet for you, because like you said, you set it up before your diagnosis. Obviously, having that land afterwards, I mean, that must have been a huge help, having that
incredible.
With dealing with
Sarah
with
Edmondson was one of my incredible contacts who held my hand through my diagnosis, my mastectomy. She was sending photos. She was doing she was my rock.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have had that relationship with Sarah, and I'm blessed to have had that. If it wasn't for Weir.
Yeah.
And Heather stuff is a little bit less vocal about it, but she was there, and that's just one of the many aspects where we're there for each other through it. There are so many more stories that have come out.
But I think what I've loved hearing about that group is I love the fact that you hear people being like, I had a question about agency or about a notice, but I didn't want to put it in a public forum. So it's not just the personal, it's also this space. You're like, guys, section 21, it's done like this, right? Or like whatever. I think that's the nice thing I found talking to people is like some people have got professional support from it. Some it's more, I'm at a point in my business where I feel like we're stuck and I need help. And then like you said, more, and then the other side of it, which is kind of what people kind of expect, which is the life side of it.
And it's
like
also
kids,
though asking
a
a question about work that's more emotionally charged than you would ask. You would never ask some of the questions that are asked within the group. Now, I've completely you do find this, but I find social media very overwhelming. It overwhelms me, and people think that I'm on it more than I am, but I've had to really step back, because I find that if I don't concentrate on one thing and do it really well, I then start not being as good as I can be.
I mean, my relationship with social media has changed a lot. I mean, I put out a lot of social media content, as you guys know, but in the last year, that's been a very conscious decision, and that has been very much professionally driven.
Yeah.
From a personal standpoint, actually, if you look at what I post personally about my life outside of work, that has diminished considerably. I would, a year plus ago, I would be posting every few days about the kids and photos of like we're doing this. Likewise, I think it is overwhelming, and I think also I found about 6 months ago, with all this shit going on with Trump in America, and
it's just an
mini Trump over here. Like I went through a kind of month, 2 month window where you get sucked into all of this and the algorithm and
So that was one of the things even with the group, the problems so I felt I couldn't give what I needed to give to the group at the time, but I now feel much better, much stronger. But the fact that all of the board has stepped in and now they are there for everybody else, at the beginning I felt that weight on my shoulders that I couldn't give.
You've got to be careful. There's only so much you can give.
There's only so much you can
to
give.
clients, to friends,
exactly
to the industry.
That. But it takes a lot to recognise that, and it takes I think it takes a lot of work to really see that and to really work on it, and to change it, because you're hardwired. This is what I tell my girls as well. You're hardwired a certain way, and to step away from that just because you're preconditioned to think certain things is really difficult.
One of the reasons it's worked really well is because we're almost therapists in this job, right?
We do, yeah.
And women are especially
counsellors.
Good. Yeah, exactly, counsellors. And in fact, some of the best negotiators I've ever known have been at Foxtons. They were fantastic, number ones all the time. But they're taking you're taking so much on board as agents, right, from other people, saying, oh, I'm moving because of divorce, I'm moving because of this, demographics, for example, or financial problems, etc. But how do you talk about it? Where do you go to when actually you need some help as well?
And I think we take it personally.
Boys, and that's where I think has done so well. It gives that platform for people to speak out.
And look, I think that's what the boys' club is trying to figure out for guys, right? And I think that's really exciting to see that kind of relaunch this year. Ben's now pulled together a board. Really nice gathering of blokes. I mean, I've been very actively involved with Ben with it since he started. I made a conscious decision not to be on the board because I do, as we've just talked about,
too much.
I do so much already.
Yeah.
I had a chat to Ben and I said, look, I fully support everything you guys are doing for, and I hope I can contribute and be a part of it. But I'm not going to sign on the dotted line because I don't want to let anyone down.
Yeah.
And I also don't want to feel like I'm letting myself down. There is only so much we can do in any given day, and we're two businesses and two kids at home, and already do the Zoopla Lettings Advisory Board, and
I think it's so.
This, that and the other.
It's so important. Even though it's important to you, it's so important to look after yourself. And I think as with the conference last year, with the panel, and it's such an important topic that also men need support. And with I think the crucial part was that it was never anti-men. It was never this huge kind of movement to exclude men from any of the conversation. It was always so important to have men be part of that conversation, fully part of that conversation. And I think that's why it's had the success that it's had, and it's had the incredible people on the board behind it. I won't mention one in particular, but every single person on that board has contributed to make it the success it is today.
And look, and I think they're very different challenges that the women's and men's group face, right? And I think like you said, the important thing, embracing diversity and empathy in any way, shape, or form, to lift anyone up, any category of people up, does not in any way mean that detracts from someone else, or you have to take something from someone else and give it to someone. And I think that's a really important message right now, because I think there is a lot of dialogue out there, and I think again, particularly in the sphere of young men, that the empowerment of women and people of colour and ethnicity and trans and all this sort of stuff, there is this very strong dialogue out there that has come at their expense. And there is a modicum of truth to that, because they had a ring-fenced opportunity of unbridled entitlement. That was just the way things were. And so yes, you could argue that some opportunities have evaporated, but that's not because anyone's saying you're not worth it, you're not entitled to it, you don't deserve it. It's just there is someone who happens to be more qualified, more deserving, more effective.
It's an important conversation.
And if you don't like that, just be better. Right? But I think the challenge with guys, I think the great thing with women is women typically, and of course we are talking in vast generalisations with all of this now, but women typically are better at talking about shit, as we know, and men are typically fucking appalling.
Yeah.
So the challenges with the two different groups is fascinating, and it's been doing the Boys Club with Ben the last couple of years, it's been a fascinating and often frustrating thing. 'Cause it's like we really want to give this space to guys that helps, but it's really hard to get guys to talk. It's been really interesting since they announced the board a few days ago. There's been a sudden outpouring within again the closed Facebook group. And there's been some incredible shares. There's been some guys in there being really honest about the day-to-day challenges that they are facing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to name names, but one of them in there, I knew a lot of what was going on, but it's been kept very private, and he very openly shared a lot of big stuff that he's dealing with in his life, and I know from the stories that we've shared in the group before, where we've had little webinars and like recorded sessions, it resonates. I think for guys, a lot of it is the reassurance that it's not just them.
I also think for Ollie, he didn't really have anywhere to go when I was going through my thing. I was going through it, but he was going through it too, and there were very few places where he could go to actually talk about it. I mean, if we had the business up and running at the time when I was going through that.
And but I think there's a very common thing with guys. Guys often, be it through how they place themselves or whatever, find themselves in situations where they need to be the rock.
Yeah, exactly. That.
Whether that's household income or supporting a partner through something or a child or whatever. I think that is often the biggest struggle for guys is we want to be those hunter-gatherer protector kind of genetic types that we are. We want to, but it comes at a cost. It comes with a toil and a burden, and it's, for a lot of guys, that's really fucking difficult to talk about, and really difficult to know who to talk about. And, and a lot of guys, we keep coming back to this thing, a lot of guys when they're going through stuff feel like they are the only person going through that, the only person who's felt it, and somehow there is some connection to what they're going through, that something they've done somewhere in their life has somehow led them to this situation that they're in. It's a fascinating one. But let's the great thing to know is that if you're not a group, if you're not a member of either of those groups, women and men out there, if you're not, just join in. You don't need to contribute. You don't need to feel any pressure that you have to go in and all of a sudden open your heart
and there's the
and share
conference
your
coming
biggest,
up,
darkest
and
secrets.
I'm going as a guest.
How nice is that going to be? Not having to be worried about the schedule and who's doing what when, just be able to enjoy it. And yes, let's talk about the conference. So 5th of March, 6th of March?
6th of March.
6th of March, back at the Pullman. Up near King's Cross, Euston.
Yeah, that's right.
Same venue as last year, which is a great venue.
It used to be my baby, and it's been a joy to watch from a distance because there's been some great additions to the board. So I'm super excited to see, and I'm sure it's gonna, as usual, they're gonna absolutely smash it. But the theme is not a conference, right?
Not a conference. So the WEA event.
The WEA event. I think nobody has. It's you walk away, and whatever you take away from that day, be it for your business or on a personal level, I think there's so much that you get out of that day because it is unique. It is a very different event, and that's the feedback that we've got time and time again from the very first one, which they had called. I remember being approached, and somebody told me that was imperfectly perfect. And that was the best thing.
You guys have done something so different, and I've been very outspoken about your events since you started doing them because they are something different. It's we've got a lot of industry events that conferences that do happen, and let's tell it how it is. There's a lot of the same stuff you hear there, a lot of the same conversations, whether it's about right now adopting AI or the Renters' Rights Act or, how to do better with your conversions or generate leads, very estate agency orientated stuff. And yes, you have your keyline speaker at a lot of these events who might talk about their Olympic sports career or whatever, but outside it is really nuts and bolts agency. And I think the really interesting thing with your guys' events right from the offset was anyone from any industry could go along to your event and walk out with very similar takeaways than agents will in the room. Yes, there is some agent related content in there. We have our Rightmove stats back this year, and we've had people talk about language within agency and structure and all this sort of stuff. So there is
it's embedded within
but it's fundamentally about culture, right? It's more about it's a culture event. It's not a here's how you sell an extra 10 houses next year.
Yeah.
It's culture, and if what's the saying? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you can have the best strategy in the world, but if your culture's shit, you're gonna fall flat on your face eventually. And that's what your guys' event gets.
It's giving you the confidence as well to go out and implement something that you potentially wouldn't have done before, thought of before.
And look, I think I found for me, my biggest takeaways have been more as a husband and a parent than as a business owner, because I've always been pretty open. It was outrageous that I started the business with a female co-founder back in 2004 who was also gay. I mean, my God, so that kind of stuff for me has never been like, I've always found that stuff quite mysterious to me because, originally Anne was going to work for me, and then she very quickly was like, hold on a fucking second. I've done this 7 years, you've done this 1. But at no point in that thought process
was it a woman.
Was it about the fact she was a woman or was the fact that she was gay? Neither of those ever came into that conversation. So, but like I said, I found it fascinating, the talk about language that has always stuck with me from Rachel. I found so powerful, particularly her story about when they were having a kid. And
I know you couldn't hear a pin drop in that audience. So it was truly incredible, and she was so anxious about it, and
but also just
the delivery
just
of
that
the
thing
message,
you can throw moment. Something away as a sentence, and there can be no malice or intent behind it, but language it can be so important. And obviously you've had those horrendous eye-opening stories from the likes of Claire Yates, early doors, where it was like, wow, what the fuck. And also menopause. I've got a wife at that, we're at that point in our lives, 2-3 years ago, like a lot of guys, and actually like a lot of society up until that point that aren't women, it wasn't something that was talked or discussed or really thought much about. And that, you guys talking about that event has definitely changed my attitude and my attitude to understanding it more and developing knowledge around it. And so I think,
it's again having those conversations with, we started off in the first conference talking about everything from rape, anxiety, confidence, menopause, but also building it into your how you take that in and how you communicate with people, and it's also that communication with your peers, with your husband, with your kids, with your business partners.
It sounds naff, but I think, and some people, some guys, particularly with Kristjan, say this, but like I really feel like genuinely you come out of that event learning how to be a slightly better human being.
Yeah, I was literally about to say this exact words.
You guys think you learn how to be a better friend, a better partner, a better brother, a better son, sister, daughter, whatever it is, and then that you can hopefully apply some of that to your business that drives a better business, and whether that is a better business in revenue or profit, or whether that's just a better business where your staff come in happier, feeling more valued and appreciated, and and as a result of that are more loyal, or whatever, or that you just take away that it doesn't need to be anything. You don't need more loyalty and more income or revenue. The fact that you deliver a happier, healthier workplace is enough. So look, if you haven't yet been to the event, where the fuck have you been? But look, it's not that far off. You will have plenty of time to recover from that before we get into conference season at the back end of the year. Yeah, go. Or if you feel you can't go, send some of your team members, and I think obviously, absolutely, there should be some women on your team there, but I think try and get at least one man within your business to go as well, because it is really important that we all learn. Let's just all keep learning. Look, guys, I think we're going to need to wrap that up there, because we are closing in on breaking the record of my chat with Kostas.
Wow.
We have definitely passed the 1 hour mark. I think we're sitting at about 1 hour 50, 1 hour 20.
I was going to challenge you about Ropa. Well, anyway, next one. We'll have to be
round
back.
2, ding ding. So we'll get you guys back later in the year. It's been an absolute joy and a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us.
And talk to you guys soon. Guys, thanks a lot. Tune in next time. Bye.